Welcome, believers. Welcome, conspiracy theorists. Welcome to the wonderfully weird world of the Tinfoil Hat Fair Club, where we talk about all the batshit crazy stuff that goes on in the world. And there is loads, right? So today, I want to talk about an incident that happened in Wales, right? Now, I am an avid UFO fan. I have been since I was young. Totally believe they exist, right? Never knew about this story until I stumbled across it accidentally. And this is only up the road from me, really. So let me tell you a story, right? And it happened in 1974, and it's called the Berwyn Mountain Incident. So the event happened on the 23rd of January 1974. A huge rumble was heard over the area when it was thought to be an earthquake. Well, according to the military and the government bodies, right, I would assume they just said that, yeah, it's an earthquake. But it did coincide with fallen objects landing in the epicenter. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Seems a bit fishy, right? So, to all the locals of the area, there was no doubt that something fishy was going on. Maybe even a crashed UFO that the authorities were trying to cover up because they would, let's face it, they would, right? UFO researchers and investigators hit the area and interviewed residents, right? They would treat local people's claims of a government cover up seriously, right? Then, when declassified documents finally found their way into the public domain in the early 2000s, it would seem that they were on the button, right? So the UFO researchers interviewed people and thought, hang on, there's a cover up going on, right? And it turned out they did. They were spot on the money, right? So let's tell the story. Now, I'll get my information from a website called UFO Insight. Please check them out. It's well worth it. It's a really, really cool website. Right, so the story starts on a cold night in Wales in January 1974. So around 8:30 at night, now it would have been dark then, the evening creeps in at around 5 o'clock at that time of year, right? The ground around the Berwyn Mountain shook. An orange explosive sound echoed through the area, and the orange glow on the mountainside would suggest that exactly it was an explosion, right? It wasn't an earthquake, it was an explosion. Now, I need to tell you this because it's important, right? Large earthquakes in Wales are extremely rare. So I've done a quick Google to see how often Britain has earthquakes because I am now, I'm not going to tell you my age, I am old, let's face it, right? I've never witnessed an earthquake, right? Now, on average, several hundred earthquakes are detected by the British Geological Survey each year, but almost all are far too faint to be felt by humans. Those that are felt generally cause very little damage, right? Nevertheless, earthquakes have, on occasion, resulted in considerable damage. But one was in 1580 and one was in 1884. So you can see an earthquake strong enough to cause an explosion and the ground to shake is virtually unheard of, right? So the official explanation would state that an earthquake measuring 3.5 on the Richter scale had hit the area. Now, the epicenter, as stated by the British Geological Survey, was likely to be Bala Lake. Right? Now, this was incidentally the same spot where local residents would report seeing the aftermath of an explosion. Now, the explosion, according to military reports, were the result of a bizarre meteor shower. One meteor went crashing into the mountainside. So, not only have you got an earthquake happening, what is extremely unlikely, but you also have a meteorite crashing at the same time. Makes you think, doesn't it? I'm not actually buying that, right? So, as you would imagine, police switchboards were going into meltdown, right, with concerned people and residents. Strangely, though, when the report came through, it only mentioned the earthquake and not sightings from locals. These details would only come to light in 2008 when leaked details of the incident became public. Right, so initially all they reported on was the strange earthquake. Now, what's more, many of the reports to police that evening would state clearly that residents believed they had seen a UFO in the sky before the earthquake struck. Now, one particular interesting note in the leaked documents is one recorded by a police officer on duty that evening. And it reads, right, there's been a large explosion in the area and there's a large fire in the mountainside. I can see the fire from where I am, right? So earthquakes, obviously, I suppose, could cause a fire, but this is on a mountainside. Now, Berwyn Mountain is very isolated. So, where did that fire come from, right? Now, despite what the military were offering as the official version of events, it was obvious to anyone with an interest in the incident that their version was far from the truth. That's not unusual, is it? All right. You know, government officials, military officials, any sort of government body, you cannot trust them. You cannot trust them, right? And it turns out, like any incident, some folk got a lot closer to the incident than the military would have liked, right? Like a woman called Pat Evans. Now, Pat Evans was a nurse. She wanted to get on site just in case her skills as a nurse might come in handy. Now, as she was heading towards the site in her car, she noticed strange lights going up and down the mountainside. Now, at first, she thought they were a rescue team. However, she soon began to realise how difficult the terrain would be to negotiate. In the darkness, no less, right? Besides, these lights appeared to move in a very strange manner. She would also state to seeing a pulsating orange glow from a stationary position on the mountain, right? She would state in 2010 that the object couldn't have gotten there any way apart from being flown there. To Evans, there is no doubt it had to be a UFO of some sort, and that is her words, right? Evans quickly realised that whatever sat on the mountainside, it certainly wasn't the scene of an aircraft crash, right? So, about 40 years later, Pat Evans would elaborate a little, right? So obviously this story isn't going away, as it doesn't, right? So 40 years later, she's mulling over the story, and she says, right, the object was moon-like, but without windows or doors. I've never seen anything like it before or since. I have no idea what it was. I just wish we'd stayed to see what the end result was. Right, so one UFO researcher who was first on the scene was Margaret Fry, and she lived locally. It was her hard work and investigatory skills. Also, she went around interviewing witnesses that would form the core of events that evening. Now, I've had a little Google search on Margaret Fry because I do like to do that. Now, there's not a lot out there, but what I have found seems to state that she was a well-respected lady and had written a book called Link to the Stars. Now, there's also an interview she gave to the Swansea UFO Network, and I'll play a clip, right? But check the full interview out on YouTube. I just want to play a little snippet so you get an idea of what she's about, all right? But do check the full interview out because it is out there. So Fry would speak to several residents and they would paint a totally different picture to what the military were painting, all right? So look, as I say, I'll play the video, all right? You just a snippet, right? And then obviously check the full one out.
Oh, here we are in sunny Abergele, again in North Wales, to speak to veteran researcher Margaret Fry. Hello, Margaret.
Hello.
Very nice for you to see us.
I'm very pleased to meet all of you. I don't often get the chance
And it's
to
absolutely
talk about UFOs.
Oh, don't you? All right. Well, it's an honour to meet you because, in my mind, you're one of the main veteran UFO researchers in Britain today.
Now, one of the more interesting were the statements from a local hotel manager. She would state to Fry that in the hotel bar each evening following the incident, the conversation was increasingly about the military sealing off the area and ushering anyone who got close to the perimeter away without explanation. There were also reports of an American military presence. So, why would the military ush people away? Why would they seal it off? And why would the American military be there if it was just an earthquake, right? Now, and in the hours leading up to the event, 2 long-haul lorry drivers were driving back from Lincolnshire to the area. Their hopes were to arrive to the local pub. On their way, each would notice a strange cigar-shaped object apparently hovering over Bala Lake. Now, Bala Lake is meant to be the epicenter of this earthquake, right? Now, they continued to watch the object as they drove. Upon arriving, they would find the pub shut. They banged on the door, wondering why the pub had been shut so early. Then they looked at their watches and realised it was after 1 a.m. All right, so they've got a serious missing time problem there, haven't they, right? So, because we said earlier, like last week, in 1974, pub hours were very strict. And I think they had to close at 10 o'clock, right? So it's now 1 a.m., right? If they wanted to get to the pub before 10, then they've literally got, over 3 hours missing. Where did they go? Where did they go? Were they abducted? You don't know, do you, right? So, in the days after the event, a family were driving down a quiet road around 20 miles from the Berwyn Mountains, right? A strange humming sound suddenly filled the air. And out of nowhere, a saucer-shaped object passed in front of them, just above the treetops, and then it vanished out of sight. It wasn't only Wales that was getting buzzed at the time. According to declassified documents, at least 5 incidents came to light, with reports coming in from Sussex and Lincolnshire. And I bet you loads went unreported as well, because in 1974 you didn't make reports like this unless you were extremely brave, because you were ridiculed, right? Now, almost 2 decades later, in 1996, a whistleblower would talk to a UFO researcher called Tony Dodd. Now, I've looked into him, right? Now, Tony Dodd is quite rightly still viewed as one of the leading UFO investigators in the UK. And even after his death in 2009, not only was his influence crucial in the organisation of independent UFO research in the United Kingdom, his influence was global, with the international reach of investigations. So Todd was not a lifelong UFO or space enthusiast. At the same time of his first sighting in 1978, he was a North Yorkshire police sergeant, and a highly respected one at that, right? So he didn't do this all his life. After his sighting, he got involved then and become extremely well respected. So this Tony Dodd is worth listening to, all right? So he spoke to a whistleblower, right? Now, according to the whistleblower, several days before the incident, his unit received orders to head for Birmingham, right? So this whistleblower is obviously in the army, right? Then from Birmingham, they proceeded to Chester and then on to Llangollen, right? Now, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that right. It is Welsh, Llangollen, right? At Llangollen, they set up the base. All this time, the soldiers assumed they were doing live drills. But as soon as the earthquake hit, they were put into action and immediately told to head to Landfall, right? And not to stop under any circumstances until they reached their destination. So if this is true, then someone knew it was going to happen, right? Because they went to Birmingham. I don't know what they picked up in Birmingham. They went to Chester and then on to Llangollen in Wales, right? And they were literally, I think, only 18 miles away from where we'll call it a crashed UFO, right? Where the UFO crashed. So they must have known it was on its way, right? Now, once at their destination, his small 5-body unit team were handed 2 oblong crate-like boxes. They were loaded onto their flatbed truck and told to head straight to the Portland Down facility. Setting off, a little bemused, all 5 soldiers agreed to stop at a convenience store so they could get themselves a drink. Almost as soon as they vacated their vehicle, a plainclothes man approached them, producing high-level military ID, and ordered them to carry on with their journey without stopping. Now, Portland Down. Let me tell you about Portland Down, right? Okay, so they're heading towards Portland Down. Now, Portland Down is a chemical and biological research facility. Portland Down is a top-secret facility in Wiltshire. Now, chemical and biological experiments take place there. They include work on decontamination, biological warfare, radiation treatment, and management. Of course, that is all we know. Such is the absolute secrecy of the facility. Perhaps not surprising then that the military units were to transport their cargo to such a base, right? Now, upon reaching Porton Down, the whistleblower revealed to Dodd the most remarkable part of his account. Now, he said although he and his men would view events from behind screens, these screens were transparent and no effort came to stop them peeking through the gaps. Right? Scientists opened the boxes and inside each box was a grey alien type creature. Each lay in decontamination chambers, presumably done at the site of the crash. Okay, so basically what this whistleblower was saying is there was a crashed UFO in that mountains. It wasn't an earthquake. And in that crashed UFO were alien bodies, right? Now, upon the removal of the creatures from the chambers, it became obvious how frail they were. It also became apparent how not of this world they also were, right? So they were grey aliens. Now, in the days that followed their journey and transportation of the two crates, rumours began to swell among the units that some of the cargo contained live aliens. All units received strict instructions not to talk about the incident, even among themselves. So this was proper top secret, right? Right, so, grey aliens, right? Are we surprised that the British government have got aliens? I'm not surprised, right? Now, as an avid UFO enthusiast, I tend to just believe that sort of stuff, all right? We do know that I would imagine the Americans, the Russians, the Brazilians, the British have got alien bodies, right? So now we jump forward to 2018, and in the documents obtained by a UFO researcher called Russ Keller. Now, Russell Keller has his own website called UFOparanormal.com. If you're interested, check him out. This is what he says about himself. He says, so look, as you say, you've got to have a little look at these UFO researchers to see if they're legit, right? He says, I investigate all aspects of the paranormal, including UFOs and aerial phenomena, including the Berwyn Mountain UFO crash, ghosts, cryptozoology, with a particular focus on the search for Bigfoot. So he is well into stuff like that. As an experienced investigator and an abductee, I've dedicated myself to uncovering the mysteries of the unknown. I am an alien abductee and a super soldier. My name is Russ Keller. Over the years, I've videoed some of the best UFO footage he's ever filmed. And he says, we are not alone. Right, and I totally believe that. I totally believe we're not alone. Now, Russ Keller not only claims to have documents concerning the Berwyn Mountain incident, but a map showing the presence of an alien base in the region. Now, that is not as mad as it sounds, right? We have covered cattle mutilation in that area, and there is a high presence of strange lights in the sky. He also claims the person who handed him the map was on the mountainside on the night in question and had 4 more witnesses with him. Okay, and he says, right, upon hearing the crash, the earthquake and explosion, whatever you want to call it, they drove to the area. Now, Keller would state the 5 witnesses saw a strange object and got to have a look. But the military were told to, well, basically were told to they were told to leave, basically. Of course, the military would tell them to leave, wouldn't they, right? Keller claims the map came into his possession following a lecture he had given in the early 2000s. A mystery person offered it to him, although there is nothing known regarding their identity. They did pass on their research to Keller, though, and combined with Keller's own investigations, the information is quite revealing and, if true, quite explosive. It would suggest the Berwyn Mountain incident was not a one-off by chance UFO crash landing, but one of provocation by the military themselves. What do you think of that? That is a bit of a bombshell, right? It was the military provoking them. Did they shoot it down, right? Now, while the claims need to be taken with a cautionary pinch of salt, of course there is no doubt that there is a wealth of UFO activity in this particular area of Wales. And what's more, considerable activity also takes place off the Welsh coast. Indeed, Keller is far from being the only person to suggest that there is some kind of extraterrestrial base or gateway existing in the region, right? And Why not? Why not? I mean, there's UFO bases all over the place, apparently, isn't there? So, according to Kellett's claim, he would receive a leaked official document composed by the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, the MCA. The document confirms that an official RAF exercise took place just hours before the apparent crash of the UFO. Furthermore, they were witnessed at least 80 flashes off the North Wales coastline. Interesting, right? Kellett would further state there is no doubt that there is an alien base under the sea on the North Wales coastline where they build all their crafts, right? Why would the military want or need to light up the sea with 80 photo flash bombs if they weren't looking for a submersible object? I think they knew there was a base under the sea and they did it to light up the area. So they knew where to attack. It just seems like too much of a coincidence that this took place on exactly the same day as the Berwyn Mountain incident. Yeah, very coincidental, isn't it, right? Kellett would go on even further, claiming it was his belief that the result of the RAF mission was they kicked off one hell of an incident, he says. According to the UFO investigator, a battle of sorts ensued, with 3 alien crafts emerging from the water, and one was shot down straight away, while one escaped to a destination unknown. The last of them, however, was the one that was shot down over the Berwyn Mountains. So, was it a crashed UFO or a shot down UFO? That is different, isn't it, right? Further witnesses and grim, far-reaching consequences, more and more witnesses would step forward as the case, like many would-be forgotten encounters, enjoyed renewed interest thanks to the internet. Of course, now the internet's out there. The Berwyn Mountain incident's, becoming, it's out there, and it's reminding people of what they've seen, right? The aforementioned Kellett, for example, would provide ample witnesses, statements, and even affidavits. Affidavits. I can't pronounce it. We all know what I'm trying to say, right? One such further group of witnesses was a group of fishermen who claimed to see several flying saucers surface from the icy waters off the Irish Sea and on the night of the alleged crash in the Welsh mountainsides. Furthermore, Kellett claims one of these extraterrestrial crafts even attacked one of the Royal Navy ships in the water. Yeah, we don't want to pick a fight with these people. We really don't, right? Now, during a documentary on the incident in 2011, local resident Gerard Edwards would claim to have witnessed a bizarre saucer-like craft hovering over the mountains on the night of the 23rd of January. He would claim, right, and this is his statement, it was definitely a flying saucer. It was a pity I didn't have a camera because it was there for at least 10 minutes, just hovering, and it looked like a rugby ball, but the ends were more pointy. Now, when it took off, it just went like lightning and was gone. Right, so remember, right, 1974, people didn't carry cameras around. It just wasn't feasible, was it? Right, so they didn't have mobile phones and stuff like that. They had even black and white, I think, in 1974. You had black and white film. So there was also the apparently leaked documents from a group by the name of the Aerial Phenomena Inquiry Network, APEN. They would seemingly provide various UFO groups with these documents, which were widely accepted to be genuine or a very good fake. Right? Some of the UFO researchers would ponder whether the information was actually disinformation to cover up the actual events involving the crash of an alien craft. So look, you always get that, don't you? It gets very murky. Disinformation, misinformation. You're sending people down wrong roads of information. It just gets very, very complicated, right? Now, there is a grim side to this story, all right? But we got to mention it, right? It turns out there was a spike in leukemia cases in the mid-1970s. Leukemia, right? They had initially pointed the finger at the nuclear power station nearby. However, as news and information of the UFO crash started coming out, they kind of suspected it could have a connection. Now, according to UFO researcher Nick Redfern, and we have mentioned this man before, he is a very, very clever man. And in his book, Covert Agenda, many witnesses would claim to have seen unmarked black op helicopters in the area in the run-up and immediately after the incident. Now, these black unmarked vehicles seem to appear often around UFO sightings, don't they? Right, so black op helicopters. They don't have any signature, don't have any signage, they're just black, and they're up to no good. That's what I think. So, the Berwyn Mountain incident. Do you think that was a UFO crash? Like I said to you, earthquakes, they don't happen in Britain. They simply don't. We've got 2 registered, one in the 1500s and one in the 1800s. Now, I've lived in Britain all my life. I've not known of an earthquake. Simply haven't. Apparently, they go on all the time, but they're very, very sort of like, humans don't feel them. Cats probably do, but we don't. All right, so there was an earthquake. Right at the same time, there was a meteorite strike, right, and an explosion. That seems dodgy to me. I am going to say, right, that it was a crashed UFO. Whether it got shot down or not, yeah, that's something else, isn't it? Yeah, could have been shot down, I suppose. But I'm going to say it was a crashed UFO site, and they took the bodies to Portland down. That's what I'm going to say. I do believe that. I really, really do. So, this was the Tinfoil Hat Fan Club. Thanks for sticking around and listening to me waffle on. As I say, I am a massive UFO fan. I'm surprised I haven't heard the story before, but there you go. There you go. That's what the internet's good for, isn't it? You find stuff. So, look, this was the Tinfoil Hat Fan Club. Really appreciate you sticking around to the end, and I will catch you on the next one. Thanks very much.